Morning light touched the tall glass windows of the Malik apartment and turned the living room soft and golden. The city was still waking up, but Adrian Malik was already in the kitchen, making pancakes the way his daughter liked them. Small, round, and with tiny chocolate chips arranged like smiling faces. He was a very rich man, but in this quiet hour he was just a dad in a plain blue shirt, humming while he flipped a pancake and checked the school schedule on his phone. "Zara, shoes," he called gently. "And your art folder." Zara ran in, hair in a neat ponytail, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She was 10, thoughtful and bright, with the kind of steady eyes that made adults slow down and speak honestly. She wore her favorite sneakers, the ones with light blue laces that always came undone. She placed her art folder on the table and looked at the pancakes like she was meeting new friends. "Two faces, Papa?" she asked. "Two faces," he said, smiling, "and extra syrup for courage." "Do I need courage today?" "Always," he said. "For learning, for listening, and for telling me if my tie looks strange." She tilted her head at his tie. "It is a little loud." He looked down at the bright pattern, laughed softly, and picked a quieter one. When the two of them sat together to eat, their hands moved with a familiar rhythm. She poured a little syrup. He poured the milk. They ate in peace. On the counter, his phone buzzed with a message from a friend, a short reminder about his school. Visit later that morning. He answered the call while Zara washed her cup. "Yes, I'll be at the school," he said. "They're unveiling the library plan today. Maybe I'll find a future stepmom there too," he joked, light and careless. The way adults sometimes do when they are trying not to show their worry. Kidding. Just hoping to find more stability for Zara. Zara paused at the sink. She heard him say stepmom, a word that made her feel curious, not scared. She didn't remember a lot about her mother, only soft hands, warm songs, and one simple idea. Real care is quiet and steady. She dried her cup and slid it into the cabinet, thinking about what a good mom might look like now. Not a fancy dress, not a perfect photo, but someone who noticed when a shoelace came loose and tied it without making a big scene. Someone who stayed calm when small things went wrong. Someone who never looked past people. In the car, the city looked like a moving puzzle outside the window. Adrian drove himself because he liked the time it gave them to talk. "There's a big day at school," he said. "They'll show the library design. I thought we might help choose some books later." "Can we choose story books and science books?" Zara asked. "Story and science," he said. "We can choose both. Life needs both." The school sat on a hill behind tall trees, with a neat brick path and balloons tied to the entrance for the event. The lobby had paintings made by students and a large display about the library fundraiser. Parents and guests were arriving in clean suits and calm smiles, the kind of people who looked like they had a plan for everything. A few looked at Adrian with quick interest. His name traveled fast in rooms like this, even when he didn't say much. He nodded politely, the way he always did, and kept one hand gently on Zara's shoulder as they walked in. That was when Zara saw her. The janitor was near the hallway holding a small cart with careful hands. Her name tag said Grace. She wore a simple uniform, her hair pulled back, and comfortable shoes that made a soft, steady sound on the floor. A little boy near her had dropped his juice. It had splashed across the tiles like a bright sun. Before any teacher called for help, Grace was already there, kneeling and smiling at the boy with kind eyes. "It's okay," she said softly. "Let's make the sun go away." She passed the boy a little napkin and asked him to hold it while she wiped the floor. She did not hurry. She finished the job with care, then handed the boy a fresh juice from her cart, the exact flavor he had lost. The boy blinked. surprised and relieved. Grace smiled again, the kind of smile that felt like clean air after rain. She watched him, take 2 steps to be sure he was steady, then wiped one last corner the boy had missed. Zara stood very still. She watched the way Grace checked the floor from more than one angle, making sure no child would slip. She watched the way Grace set the wet sign, not in the middle of the hallway where it would annoy people, but in just the right place to keep everyone safe. No fuss, no announcement, no look around to see who was watching. Just the work. Done. With dignity. The head of school waved to Adrian and he excused himself to say hello. Zara stayed where she was, close to the hallway, because she liked to see the stream of little events that made a school day come alive. A girl with nervous hands rushed past, looking lost. Grace noticed and called kindly, "Art room is left, then second door. Your bow looks pretty today." The girl touched her bow, smiled, and went the right way. A few minutes later, the security guard at the front door came in. He looked tired. Grace handed him a small paper cup with hot tea. "Mr. Reyes," she said, using his name with respect, "this one helps the throat." Mr. Reyes lifted the cup and laughed in a soft, thankful way. "You always know," he said. Zara's shoelace came loose right then. It liked to do that. She bent to fix it, but the lace had slipped under the tongue and pulled tight. She made a small face. Before she could ask for help, she felt a comfortable presence kneel beside her. "That one is tricky," Grace said in a warm whisper, as if this was a secret between friends. "May I?" Zara nodded. Grace's hands were quick but gentle. She loosened the lace, looped it twice, and made a firm bow that would hold. Then, with a small pen, she wrote something on a tiny sticky note and gave it to Zara. The note said, "You are brave. Keep learning." The handwriting was neat and open, like someone who did not want to hide anything. "Thank you," Zara said, and she meant more than the lace. Grace smiled again and stood up slowly, pushing the cart away from the busy area so kids wouldn't bump it. Adrian returned with a thin program for the event. "They'll show the library plan in the auditorium," he said. "You'll like it. There's a reading nook shaped like a boat." "I saw the janitor help a boy," Zara said. "She made him feel safe, and she knew Mr. Reyes needed tea." "She sounds very good at her job," Adrian said, glancing toward the hallway and catching a glimpse of Grace moving with that quiet purpose. He had a meeting with the head of school and some guests, so he let himself be gently pulled in that direction. People asked him for thoughts about book access and digital tablets. He gave careful answers about stories, curiosity, and community. Inside the auditorium, the new library design appeared on a big screen. There were bright windows, soft chairs, and strong shelves. The head of school spoke about how a space like this could change the way children felt about reading. Everyone clapped. A few parents whispered about tiles and finishes. Adrian thought about sound, light, and the way a child curled up with a book when the world felt too loud. He wanted a place that felt like a deep breath. During questions, a child in the second row sneezed and dropped a pencil. The pencil rolled down the aisle, then stopped at the foot of the stage. Grace, who had quietly taken a seat in the very back, stood and walked down the side, keeping to the shadows. She picked up the pencil and held it until the child made eye contact. Then she walked all the way around so she would not block anyone's view, and returned the pencil with a gentle nod, as if to say, "You matter, and your small problem is still a real problem to me." After the presentation, a group of parents gathered near Adrian. They were friendly and polite. One mentioned a networking dinner. Another asked if he would host a reading night. The head of school spoke about a parent committee. A few adults joked, very lightly, about how the school also seemed full of eligible people. Adrian smiled in the safe, public way he used in rooms like this. He did not repeat his earlier joke. It had not felt quite right even when he said it on the damn phone. He looked over the crowd for Zara and saw her by the hallway, watching the flow of people like a scientist at a river, thoughtful and calm. He excused himself and went to her. "Ready to pick a few book lists?" he asked. "In a minute," she said. "Look." They both watched as Grace found a small, lonely lunchbox on a bench. It was bright yellow with little stars. She washed her hands, wiped the box carefully, and opened it just an inch to be sure it was not spoiled in the warmth. Then she closed it and wrote another sticky note. This one said, "I kept you safe. Find your owner." She stuck the note on the lid, placed the lunchbox where a child could easily see it, and turned the handle so it looked like a friendly face waiting to be found. It was nothing, and it was everything. "She sees details," Zara said. She sees people. They spent an hour with the librarian choosing titles that made them both smile: adventure stories, picture books about maps, a simple series about science experiments with kitchen items. When they finished, they said goodbye to the head of school and walked out to the car. The sky was bright and the air felt lighter than when they had come in. On the way, they passed Grace again. She was checking a small bump in a carpet near the exit. She smoothed it down, then tested it with her foot, then looked at it sideways the way careful people do. Only when she was sure it would not catch a small shoe did she move on. She said hello to them with the same gentle respect she showed every person at the school, from the teachers to the delivery driver, with he. The next morning, the city woke to soft clouds and a promise of light rain. Adrian brewed coffee and checked his calendar. There were messages from the head of school and from 2 parents who wanted to introduce him to their very nice friends. The notes were polite and careful, and they came with small lines about hobbies, careers, and charity boards. He read them with a thoughtful face, then looked up as Zara came to the table with her breakfast bowl. "Big day?" she asked. "Just some friendly meetings," he said. "They want to talk about the library and maybe about other things too." Zara stirred her cereal. "Other things like a stepmom?" Adrian smiled in a gentle way. "People like to suggest things. It is what people do. I listen. Then I use my own mind." She nodded. "I will use my mind too." The first coffee meeting took place at a bright cafe near the school. The woman who joined them was well known in certain circles. She arrived in a neat beige coat and carried a gift bag with ribbons. "For Zara," she said, offering a puzzle of a famous painting. "Thank you," Zara said, polite and warm. She loved puzzles, but she noticed the woman looked at Adrian far more than she looked at her. The woman talked about art, travel, and a big gala on the weekend. She asked Adrian about his favorite museums, his favorite architects, and his favorite restaurants. When Zara shared that she liked maps and small science books, the woman smiled kindly but did not ask for more. "You must be very busy," the woman said to Adrian at one point. "It takes energy to manage everything at your level." Her tone was smooth and impressed. "I also make pancakes," Adrian said, amused. "That takes energy too." Zara smiled. The woman laughed, but it sounded a little like a speech. When they left the cafe, Zara held her father's hand. "She is nice," she said. But she did not ask about the library boat. "No," he said. She did not. In the afternoon, a second meeting took place in a quiet tea room. The person was a calm lawyer who had a good sense of humor and a very tidy notebook. She spoke with respect and asked about the library plan in detail. She also asked Zara if she liked fiction or facts. "Both," Zara said, and the lawyer wrote "both" in her neat notebook like it was a serious fact. Zara liked that. But after a while, the talk moved toward a long list of charity boards, leadership lessons, and a plan for aligning public image with community impact. It was not wrong. It just felt more like a file than a feeling. That evening, Adrian found Zara making a little paper boat. She placed it on the kitchen counter and pushed it lightly with her finger so it sailed from one side to the other. "Do you think the real boat in the library will have a name?" she asked. "We could ask the school to let the children choose," he said. "A vote would be fair." "I would name it After School Quiet," she said with a small laugh. "It will be calm, like a little lake inside a room." He looked at her, then at the paper boat, and he understood something deep and simple. Calm did not come from big speeches. Calm came from care. The next day, he walked Zara to school and saw the small morning world wake up at the gates. Teachers, with coffee cups, students with backpacks, a parent adjusting a scarf, the security guard greeting each child as if they were stars on a stage. Grace was moving her cart along the hallway, checking the corners, the way a painter checks color in light. She greeted Mr. Reyes by name, asked a fifth-grade teacher if her ankle felt better, and offered a fresh cloth to a little boy who had marker on his hands. Each action was light and fast, but each one landed with care. "Morning, sir," she said to Adrian as they passed. "Good to see you again." "Good morning, Grace," he replied. He liked saying her name. It was a small word that carried comfort. Later, Adrian met the head of school in the office. "The parents enjoyed your talk yesterday," the head said. "You have a gentle way with a room." Then, with a friendly smile that had a tiny push behind it, the head added, "There are a few community members who would love to meet you, just socially. They share your values, I think." "I'm open to meeting anyone," Adrian said, honest and even. "But I am trying to look past big words. I'm looking for steady actions." The head nodded in agreement. "Steady actions make a school work," they said, and then they were both quiet for a second, thinking of the people in the hallways who made the building feel safe. Over the next week, there were a few more polite coffees. One person brought up travel plans and said a child could fit into a busy life with the right planning. Another talked mainly about the best homes in 3 cities and asked if Zara had ever tried fencing. A third was kind, funny, and very busy. She answered 2 work calls during their short meeting and said with a warm smile that children do best with structure, then looked at her watch. None of this was bad, and Adrian did not judge them. He simply did not feel the thing. He was looking for the quiet, deep attention that made a child feel seen. During this time, Zara kept noticing Grace in small moments. One afternoon, a teacher looked very tired after a long day. Grace left a small note on the teacher's desk next to a wrapped tea bag. "You matter. 5 minutes for you." Another day, a student lost an art project right before dismissal. Grace helped the child retrace steps, checked a few likely corners, and found the piece tucked under a chair. She did not take the credit. She said, "You found it," and the child beamed with pride. When the lunch line moved slowly, Grace stepped to the side and opened a second milk crate so the line would flow better. She did it all with a steady face and kind words. Some parents noticed Adrian watching the hallways and the small systems that made everything work. A few made gentle comments like, "It's wonderful you care about every level of the school," and, "With your background, I'm sure you'd prefer someone who can keep up with your social commitments." They were not unkind. They simply carried certain ideas about how things should look. Adrian answered with a polite smile and let the words pass by like leaves on water. Then the storm came. It started, as many storms do, with a quick change in light. The sky outside the classroom windows turned a soft gray, then a heavy one. A breeze touched the trees. A drop hit a window, then a handful, then a curtain of water. The school had planned a small book fair in the courtyard, with tables under, tents and displays made by students. In 5 minutes, the courtyard turned into a lively, wet puzzle. Adrian was on campus to speak with the librarian. He watched as teachers began to move, trying to pull the book boxes inside. Parents grabbed the edges of tents to keep them steady. Children squealed, half excited and half unsure. In the center, Grace became a calm voice that guided many hands. Umbrellas. "To the east door," she called gently, pointing with her whole hand so the motion felt open, not sharp. "Dry mats at both entrances. Please keep the main path clear for the little ones." She pulled a cart with towels and stacked them in neat piles by the doors. She asked 2 eighth graders to help carry boxes and reminded them to bend their knees, not their backs. She waved to Mr. Reyes, who nodded and moved to block off a little puddle that had started near a low step. When a small child started to cry because her poster was wet, Grace knelt at eye level and said, "We can save this part," pointing to the dry corner, and gave the poster a firm, friendly trim that turned it into something new. Adrian stepped in where he could. He carried 3 boxes of books to a dry hallway and lined them up by subject as the librarian directed. He held the door for a parent pushing a cart. He helped a teacher roll up an extension cord and made sure it did not sit in water. He noticed that Grace thanked every person who tried, even if their help was small. She noticed the effort before the result. It changed the way people moved. They moved better. Zara, who had been in the art room, joined them with a bright raincoat. She handed out paper towels to younger kids and told them jokes to keep them calm. "Why did the book wear a raincoat?" she asked one little boy. "Because it did not want to be a soggy story." The boy laughed and forgot to worry. Inside, the hallways filled with a warm buzz. The book fair shifted indoors in less than 15 minutes. The wet mats caught the water from shoes. The towels kept the floors safe. The librarian's display stood again, a little smaller and a little braver. Teachers and parents shook the rain from their shoulders and smiled at one another like a team that had won a small game. When the rain eased, Grace walked the halls with a quiet checklist in her mind. She looked for any place the water might still cause trouble, under a table, near a plug, at the edge of a rug. She talked softly to her team, thanked them by name, and asked who needed a break. She noticed one of the younger custodians had very cold hands and gave him her own dry gloves. Without a word, he tried to refuse. She shook her head and said, "You need them more right now." Adrian stood back for a moment and saw the picture as a whole. There were no speeches, no announcements, no big stories to post online. There were only many small choices, each one made to keep children safe and to keep a community strong. He felt a quiet shift inside himself, like furniture moving into a better place. The idea of perfect on paper faded. The reality of steady in a storm took its seat. After things settled, the librarian thanked everyone and announced free hot cocoa in the cafeteria. Parents clapped, students cheered. Zara tugged her father's sleeve. "Did you see how she moved the towel piles?" she asked, eyes bright. "Not too close to the door so they would not get." The head of school agreed to the shadow a staff member idea with a smile that reached the eyes. It felt like a kind plan that fit the school's spirit. A week later, Adrian arrived just after sunrise, when the campus was quiet and the air was cool. The trees along the path looked like they were stretching after sleep. The hallways held a soft echo, like a theater before the show. He wore simple clothes and carried a small notebook, even though he did not plan to ask many questions. He wanted to watch and learn. At the front office, a secretary greeted him and slid over a paper with his assignment. He did not ask to choose. He took what was given. The paper said, "Grace Thompson." He felt thankful but calm. If the paper had said another name, he would still have learned something real. Today, by chance or by care, he would follow Grace. He found her in the service corridor behind the cafeteria. The cart was stocked, the broom stood straight, and a small toolkit lay open like a tidy breakfast. She looked up, surprised for only a second, then smiled like a person who welcomes whatever the day brings. "Good morning," she said. We start with a walk. He nodded and fell into step beside her. The walk was quiet at first. Grace checked. Simple things with a careful eye. Are the exits clear? Are the mats flat? Are there any new scuffs that could make someone slip? She ran a hand along a railing as if it could tell her a story. She glanced at a window latch and tightened it with 2 easy twists. At a door, she used a little bottle of oil to stop a hinge from complaining. It was like watching someone tune a small orchestra. How do you choose what to do first? He asked, keeping his voice low to match the calm. Safety first, she said. Always safety. Then comfort for students and teachers. Then, if time allows, I do the little extra things that make a place feel like home. They reached the gym. She picked a stray sticker off the floor so it would not catch a shoe. In the art room, she straightened a drying rack that leaned a little. In the science lab, she reminded a teacher to keep a clear path to the sink. It was all small work, but each piece made the day smoother. When the first wave of students arrived, the building woke up. Backpacks brushed against legs. Laughter floated down the hall. Grace moved to the front entrance and watched like a lighthouse. She knew the names of many children. She noticed a new haircut, a new brace, a new shy look that had not been there last week. She bent to greet a kindergartner who had lost a mitten and made a game of searching until the mitten giggled back from behind a plant. Adrian followed at a respectful distance and wrote short notes he would later show to Zara. She sees first, she moves second, she thanks everyone. He felt the shape of his earlier joke about finding a stepmom fall away completely. It belonged to a different man on a different morning. This morning was about what a child needs to feel steady and what a school needs to run with quiet heart. Mid-morning, a small challenge arrived, the kind that tests a team without hurting anyone. A water pipe in a second-floor restroom began to leak, not like a burst, but like a tired faucet that forgot its manners. Grace heard about it on her radio. On my way, she said, and she moved with purpose that was quick but not rushed. The restroom door. She set down a yellow sign to warn people, then asked a teacher to guide students to the restroom on the other side of the hall. Thank you, she said, and the teacher nodded with relief. Grace turned off the local valve to slow the leak, then called maintenance by name. Carlos, I have a soft leak here. It's the west wall, second floor. I turned the local. Can you bring a wrench and seal? Thank you. Carlos arrived with calm steps, and together they checked the joint. Grace held a light steady for him. Adrian stood back so he would not be in the way, and he watched something that looked like a tiny dance. 2 people, each careful and respectful, spoke in short, clear words. Here, light, turn, wipe, test. They thanked each other for each step. When the seal sat tight and the drip stopped, Grace did not cheer. She did something better. She cleaned the small puddle, checked the baseboards for water, and left a note for the afternoon team to revisit the area. She wanted safety to last. Why do you thank for everything? Adrian asked when they stepped out. Gratitude is the oil in the hinge, she said, smiling. It keeps the door moving without noise. Later, in the cafeteria between the breakfast rush and the lunch line, Grace sat at a corner table with 2 students. He recognized one from the book fair storm. The second was new to him, a quiet boy with a neat haircut and deep focus. Grace took out a short story from a folder and slid it across. Read it once, she said. Then tell me what you see. They read in silence. The story was about a bridge and a traveler who stopped to help others cross. When the students finished, Grace did not ask for theme or lesson. She asked, where did your heart slow down? Where did it speed up? The girl pointed to a line where the traveler waited without being asked. The boy pointed to a sentence about a fisherman who fixed a hole in a net for the next person. Now read it again, Grace said. and underline one word you want to carry with you today. The girl underlined, wait. The boy underlined, repair. Grace underlined nothing. I already carry my words, she said gently, but I learn new ones from you. Adrian listened with care. He learned that Grace mentored these two students twice a week in the quiet corner, not because someone told her to, but because she had seen them sitting alone months ago and thought they might enjoy a reading club. She gave them no grades. She gave them attention. She told Adrian later that small, steady attention is a ladder. It helps a child climb even on days when the steps feel tall. During a short break, they walked past the nurse's office. Grace asked about bandages and checked the supply of cold packs. She noticed the nurse's tired shoulders and offered to adjust a rolling cabinet that had a sticky wheel. She did the same at the library, where a shelf wobbled. She tightened 3 screws and asked the librarian if the after-school quiet boat would have cushions that did not slip. The librarian smiled. It will now, she said. By late morning, the day had shown its normal joys and small puzzles. A printer jam here, a squeaky door there, a child who missed a bus and needed a calm voice. Through it all, Adrian saw one pattern. Grace gave dignity to each task. She did not make things look hard so people would praise her. She made things look simple so others could relax. He felt a change inside himself. It was not big or loud. It was a steady settling, like a book finding its place on the right shelf. At lunch, Grace sat with her team in the staff room. There was laughter, and also a sense that everyone could breathe. She split an apple with a small knife and offered slices around. She asked Carlos about his mother's health. She asked another custodian about a certification exam. She told a funny story about a mop that lost a piece and turned into a ballet dancer, and everyone smiled. She thanked the person who restocked the soap and the one who handled a tricky delivery. She looked around the room the way a gardener looks at a growing bed. She saw what was strong and what needed water. Adrian asked if he could sit at the edge of the table. Please do, she said. He listened more than he spoke. He learned that Grace took night classes twice a week at the community college. What are you studying? He asked. Facilities management and safety, she said. I like to understand systems, not just tasks. It helps me serve better. Do you ever sleep? He teased softly. She smiled. Enough, she said. I also care for my father. We live together. He is funny, and his jokes are older than the school. Does he like visitors? Adrian asked, trying to keep the question light and respectful. He likes tea, she answered. And crossword puzzles. Visitors are fine if they come with both. The afternoon moved quickly. A kindergarten class needed help setting up a small museum of shoebox dioramas. Grace showed them how to place the boxes so every child could see. She taught them the word pathway and how to make one that flowed. When a teacher thanked her, she shrugged kindly and said, I like your tiny museums. Later, the loudspeaker announced a short assembly. The head of school thanked the facilities team for their work during the recent storm. Students clapped for the people who often stayed in the background. Grace did not stand up. She clapped along, a little embarrassed, and then looked at her team with pride. Adrian saw that even praise did not change her posture. She took it in, smiled with her eyes, and went back to work. At the end of the day, the hallways grew calm again. Grace checked her lists. She did one more slow walk, the way drivers check mirrors before parking. She crossed paths with Adrian near the main entrance. The light outside was gold, and it made the floor gleam. Thank you for letting me follow, he said. You were very careful, she said. Not everyone is. It helps. I learned a lot, he said. He paused, then added, You mentioned your father. I would like to bring tea to thank him for raising someone who helps so many people feel safe. No pressure. No story. Just tea. Maybe a crossword. Grace was quiet for a breath. She looked at him in a thoughtful way, then nodded. He would like that, she said. He likes the easy ones with long clues that sound like jokes. Those are my favorite too, Adrian said. They chose a time. Saturday, late afternoon, when the old man liked to sit by the window and watch birds. On the day, Adrian and Zara arrived with a small package of tea and a notebook of crosswords. Grace. Ope. The week after Adrian shadowed Grace, the air around the school felt a little different, as if the building itself had heard a new song. Teachers smiled more when they passed the facilities team in the hall. Students waved at Carlos and the others, like they were famous. Adrian liked that, but not everyone enjoyed the quiet change. In the parent group chat, a few curious notes turned into whispers. Someone had seen Adrian carrying a box near the service corridor. Someone else had noticed him talking with Grace by the east entrance. A photo appeared on a small local blog. Nothing rude, just a snapshot of a very rich man in plain clothes holding a paint tray. The headline asked a question it didn't need to ask. It was the kind of headline that tried to turn people into a story. The head of school called Adrian with a soft warning. "You may get a few messages," they said. "We'll keep our focus on the students." "Thank you," he replied. When the call ended, his own phone filled with polite alarms from his PR team. They wanted to plan statements and angles. They offered to set up a friendly interview to own the narrative and manage optics. Adrian heard the buzz of their concern and felt calm anyway. He wrote back one line. "No stories, no spin. People are not headlines." Then he turned off the notifications and took Zara to school. That day, a flyer went home in every backpack. Day of service next Saturday. Parents, students, and staff would work together to refresh 2 hallways and assemble shelves for the new library. Adrian signed up without fuss and chose the early shift under facilities. He added Zara's name, too. When he arrived on Saturday morning, he wore old sneakers and a cheerful t-shirt that already had a tiny paint dot near the hem from some forgotten weekend years ago. Zara wore a cap and a grin. Grace greeted volunteers by the supply tables. She had set out drop cloths, painter's tape, rollers, trays, screwdrivers, a level, and paper cups labeled with names. She ran through safety steps in a friendly voice. "We tape first, paint second," she said, "and keep food and drinks in the cafeteria. Ladders are for grown-ups only, 1 person on the bottom to hold. If you feel tired, we rest. Rest is smart." She divided the group into small teams. She put Adrian with Carlos and 2 8th graders who were eager and a little wild with energy. Zara joined a younger kids' crew to help label book bins. Adrian's job seemed simple. Cut a clean line along the top of the baseboard while Carlos rolled the wall. He held the brush like a pen and tried to keep his hand steady. The first stroke went wide. The second left a little wave that no one asked for. "Slow wrist, sir," Carlos said kindly. "Let the brush do the work." Grace passed and paused, her tone all warmth. "Think of it like breathing," she said. "Short breath in, long breath out. The long breath steadies your hand." Adrian tried again, breathing out while he pulled the brush. The line smoothed. He laughed quietly at himself. "I've drawn many lines with ink," he said. "Paint is a new teacher." "Paint is patient," Grace said. "It lets you try again." As the morning went on, the hallway turned from tired beige to soft, welcoming color. The 8th graders sang parts of a made-up song while they rolled the high sections under Carlos's careful eye. Zara's younger crew carried plastic bins like parade floats and placed simple labels with big letters. Animals, maps, mystery, how things work. She measured the label placement with her finger so they all lined up. Every few minutes, Grace walked the length of the hallway, answering small questions and checking for drips with the lightest touch. Near mid-morning, Adrian moved to the library space to help assemble shelves. He and 3 other parents stared at a packet of instructions with tiny drawings and a forest of screws that looked almost alike. Grace set a box of extra screws on the table and handed Adrian a small, bright sticker. "Put this on the bag with the odd-size screws," she said with a smile. "It will save 5 minutes later." He did, and it did. He found he enjoyed being a helper who asked for guidance. His hands, more used to signing documents, learned how to listen to a screwdriver. While they worked, a person with a camera stepped into the doorway and raised the lens toward Adrian. Grace moved gently, but surely, placing herself between the camera and the volunteers. "We're keeping this a family day," she said in a calm, firm voice. "Students first, no photos, please." The person hesitated, then lowered the camera and left. Adrian felt grateful. He did not say anything. He just kept building a shelf he would later fill with books for small hands. They finished the first shelf together. It stood straight and proud, level as a horizon. Grace tested it with a slow push, then smiled. "Strong," she said. "Thank you, team." She wrote down which tools they used and returned them to the right bins. She was as careful with endings as she was with beginnings. At lunch, everyone sat on the stage steps with sandwiches and fruit. The children drew mountains and boats on the paper covering the tables. Grace walked around with a box of wipes, saying, "Hands first, then food," in a voice that made the rule feel like a kindness. Adrian spoke with a few parents who had been unsure before. They watched him hand a napkin to a child, saw him listen to Carlos discuss varnish, and their faces changed the way clouds change when wind passes. The conversation shifted from curiosity about why to simple comments about how nice the hall looks. When the day ended, the hallways were brighter. The library smelled like new wood and hope. Adrian thanked the facilities team in person, one by one. He wrote small notes that said, "I learned from you today," and left them with the sign-out sheets. Then he walked out with Zara, both of them pleasantly tired with paint dots on their wrists, like tiny badges. The next week brought a different kind of test. A major city gala was set for Friday night. The host had planned to honor Adrian for his support of education. There would be photos, speeches, and a long guest list. His PR team had spent 2 weeks preparing wardrobe choices and talking points. On Wednesday, Grace mentioned her night class exam. "It's Friday," she said as they passed in the hallway. "Facilities safety and compliance. It's the long one." "Same night as the gala," Adrian said before he could stop himself. He absorbed the thought. "Do you have everything you need?" "I have notes," she said with a soft laugh. "And nerves. I will be fine." He thought about the exam all afternoon. In the evening, after Zara went to bed, he called the gala host to apologize. "I have a personal commitment I will keep on Friday," he said. He sent a quiet donation and asked the MC to remove his name from the program. Then he wrote a short, honest line to his PR team. "Please send my regrets. No replacement statement. I am unavailable." On Thursday, he asked Grace if she would like help reviewing. He did it carefully with no weight behind it. "If it would feel useful," he said, "I can quiz you, only if you want." Grace looked at him with steady eyes. She had been polite and open with him from the start. Now, she took a breath and spoke in the same steady way. "I would like that," she said, "but I need to say something first. There is a power gap. People might think I get special help because of who you are. I don't want that. I also don't want my job to change because of feelings. I want slow steps, clear lines, and respect." He listened without moving. "Thank you for saying it," he said. "You are right. We will go slow. We will keep clear lines. At the school, I am a volunteer like everyone else. Outside, I am your friend, and I will take your lead." She nodded. Then yes, quiz me. At the community library, no photos. Bring nothing but note cards and a pen. Friday evening arrived with soft wind and the smell of dinner cooking in nearby homes. The library's study room had a simple table and bright lamps. Adrian laid out note cards with big words and short questions. Class A, B, C, D, K, what burns, what fights it? Triangle of fire, heat, fuel, oxygen. How do we break one side? Lockout, tag out, why, when, how? Grace laughed when he mixed up K and C, then corrected him kindly. They took turns teaching each other. She showed him how to read a material safety data sheet. He showed her a memory trick for the order of steps in a safety check. They drank water from paper, cups, and shared a pack of crackers from the vending machine. At one point, he asked, "Why do you love this so much?" He meant facilities and safety and all the quiet work that holds a place together. "Because it gives dignity to everyone," she said. "When a place is safe and clean, children learn better. Teachers breathe easier. Families trust us. It is a kind of love you can walk on." They studied for 2 hours. Then Grace stood, smoothed her notebook, and took a long, slow breath. "I'm ready," she said. He wished her good luck, and she smiled. "Luck is for coins and fountains," she said. "I have notes and practice." She walked toward the exam room with a calm step. He stayed in the library and read one of Zara's favorite short story books. He did not wait at the door. He did not make a scene. He simply stayed near until the time was up. When she came out, her face was peaceful. "I did my best," she said. "I believe you," he answered. He handed her a small thermos of plain tea and a folded note that said, "Proud of your work." That was all. She thanked him and headed home to her father, who would have a crossword ready. News of Adrian skipping the gala moved quickly in the kind of rooms where such things matter. A few people sent shocked messages. Some asked if everything was okay. He replied with simple lines. "All good," he wrote, "a personal commitment." He did not explain. He did not compare. The months that followed did not bring any big headlines. They brought small, steady days that fit together like careful bricks. After her night class exam, Grace went back to her routine with a little more confidence in her step. She still arrived early, checked the mats, smiled at the front office, and made small notes in her pocketbook. She still pushed her cart as if it were a quiet friend. Adrian kept showing up as a helper, not a star. He learned where the extra towels lived and how to fold them fast. He learned the difference between a nice idea and a useful action. Zara watched them both with a calm joy that made her face bright. On Tuesdays, when Grace's class ended late, Adrian and Zara would meet her at a simple diner for a warm bowl of soup. Mr. Thompson sometimes joined and told stories that made strangers at the next table smile. He liked to say, "There are two kinds of rich in money and rich in time." And then he would wink at Zara and ask which kind of rich she wanted to grow. "Time rich," she would answer, "the kind where you sit longer with people you love." Grace would pat her hand and say, "That is the right answer." On Saturdays, the three of them sometimes helped at the small park near the school. They picked up litter with little grabbers and wore bright gloves. Adrian carried a bag and learned to see the tiny things that keep a place kind. Loose lids on trash cans, a bench that rocks, a step that wants smoothing. Zara drew a map of the park and marked places with secret stars. The tree with the best birds, the square of grass that held morning light like a cup, the bench where Mr. Thompson liked to sit and solve a clue. Grace added her own quiet mark. At the water fountain, where she had fixed a loose screw one day before any child noticed. She did not say it, she just drew a dot and smiled. At home, new rhythms settled in without fuss. Monday night became crossword and tea with Mr. Thompson. Thursday became story and tools, where Zara picked a tiny fix-it task, tighten a hinge, label the batteries drawer, check the flashlight by the door, and Grace showed her how to do it safely. Friday was pancake evening, even if it wasn't morning. Adrian made 3 small faces on the pan now, not 2. Sometimes he burned one and laughed. Grace flipped the next one like a pro, and Zara kept the score with a pencil and a show of great seriousness. As spring neared, the school's new library opened in a soft way, not with a loud ribbon, but with a day of reading where classes drifted in and out. The little boat nook got its name after a student vote. The choices on the board were after-school quiet, good neighbor, and quiet courage. It was close, but quiet courage won by 4 small hands. The librarian placed a tiny sign by the cushions so the name would not shout. On the first day, Zara curled up there and read a story about a small bridge with a strong heart. Grace stood at the door and watched for 5 minutes, just to make sure the space worked the way they hoped. Then she went back to her list. People, in certain circles, kept waiting for a grand event with lights and statements. It did not come. No one made speeches about unlikely matches. No one posted a glossy story. The parent chat, which had been busy for a while, softened and then forgot. New topics replaced old curiosity. Spring field trips, a music show, someone's lost jacket. Adrian's PR team learned a new habit from him. They sent fewer drafts and got more quiet hours. One afternoon, after a volunteer shift, Adrian asked the head of school for 10 minutes in private. He did not bring a folder. He brought a simple note. "I want to set up a fund," he said, "only for staff families. Custodial, cafeteria, grounds, support. It will cover books for classes, testing fees, and small emergencies. No public name, no event. A small committee can manage it." The head of school read the note twice and felt their eyes warm. "We will do it quietly," they said. "It will help in ways that no one will ever see from the outside." Adrian nodded. "That is the point," he said. Grace finished her course in late spring. The community college held a ceremony in a gym that smelled like new floors. Graduates walked in simple lines, wearing gowns that made them grin like children and elders at once. Mr. Thompson wore his best checkered shirt and polished his cane until it shone. Zara carried a small bouquet made of paper flowers she had folded herself. Adrian sat between them, happy to be part of a row instead of a stage. When Grace's name was called, the 3 of them clapped with careful pride. She walked across. The stage, without rushing, shook the dean's hand and held the certificate for a second with a look that said, "Work matters." After the ceremony, they took one photo on Mr. Thompson's old phone because he always liked to keep proof for the future. Grace smiled in the sunlight, the gown swishing a little. She looked like the same person, only taller on the inside. That evening, Adrian asked the head of school if they could use the garden after hours. He asked the librarian if the path lights could stay on for an extra hour. He asked Mr. Reyes if he would mind a walk around the fence, like he always did. Just now, with a little extra care. He asked Carlos if he had a spare bench that could be placed under the willow for 2 people who might need to sit for a second. He did all of this gently, with respect, and with one sentence to each person. "Please say no if this is a burden." No one said no. When the sun was low, the sky turned a soft color that felt like a secret. The garden smelled like mint and new leaves. Wind touched the chimes near the library door and made a sound as light as a pencil on paper. Grace arrived with Mr. Thompson and Zara, who had insisted on bringing a small lantern she made in art class. It was a jar with tiny paper stars. Adrian waited by the willow, hands patient, heart steady. He had no stage, no script. He had a very small box with a simple ring, a thin band with one clear stone that caught light but did not shout. As Grace walked over, he felt a quiet thankfulness rise in him, the kind that feels like a deep breath. He looked at Zara first. He had spoken to Zara 2 days earlier, sitting at their kitchen table with the puzzle edge half finished. "I need to ask you something," he had said. "The most important yes is yours. I am thinking of asking Grace to marry me. How do you feel?" Zara did not answer fast. She put her chin in her hand and thought the way she did with good questions at school. "I chose her before anyone else did," she said at last, "because she makes people feel safe. She makes you feel calm, too. If you ask her, ask slow. And if she says yes, we will still be the same us, just bigger." "We will still be the same us," he had repeated, the words settling into him like a true note. Just bigger. Now, under the willow, he turned toward Grace and spoke the way honest people speak when they know what they want, and also know that the other person's choice is free. "Grace," he said, "you bring quiet courage to every place you touch. You make our school safe. You make my daughter feel seen. You make me kinder. I would like to build a life with you. Slow steps, steady care, every ordinary day. Will you marry me?" Grace did not rush either. She looked at Zara. She looked at Mr. Thompson, who already had tears that made his grin shine. She looked at the garden where children ran every recess, and at the library door where she had checked hinges 100 times. Then she looked back at Adrian and nodded once, a nod so simple and sure that it felt like a promise by itself. "Yes," she said. Her voice was soft and clear. "But only if we keep what we are. Respect first, trust first, and work that stays honest." He smiled, and his shoulders relaxed in a way that spoke louder than any cheer. "Yes," he said. "That is the only way I know." Zara let out a small, happy sound and ran forward to hug them both. Mr. Reyes, passing on his evening round, pretended not to see and then gave a private thumbs up when he reached the gate. Carlos, who had set the bench earlier, checked the level one last time from a distance and laughed quietly to himself. Mr. Thompson raised his cane like a flag and said, "A toast." Then he remembered he had no glass and added, "A toast with air." Everyone laughed. The chimes answered with a soft ring. They planned the wedding for early summer, right there in the school garden. They kept it small and friendly. No spotlights, no glossy program. The music teacher brought 2 students to play a simple melody on strings. The art teacher helped Zara and her friends make paper flowers and pinwheels that moved when wind passed. The cafeteria team baked 3 trays of sweet rolls that tasted like mornings. Families brought dishes for a long table that looked like a map of many kitchens. The librarian placed a basket of favorite poems near the bench, so guests could read a few lines if they wished. The head of school said one easy sentence to start. "We are here for love that serves." Grace wore a simple dress. Adrian wore a light suit that let him breathe. Mr. Thompson wore his favorite tie with little dots that looked like stars if you squinted. Carlos and the facilities team stood proudly near the back, a position they liked, where they could see everything, and also keep an eye on wires, chairs, and wind. Mr. Reyes watched the gate and smiled at anyone who arrived with their eyes kind and their steps quiet. There were no long speeches. There were small promises. Adrian promised to keep listening and to make home a safe place. Grace promised to keep telling the truth fast and to ask for help when work felt heavy. Zara promised to remind them to rest and to make pancakes when days felt long. Mr. Thompson raised his cane again and said, "May your days be steady and your repairs be small.